Thanks for joining us. Wait, I think I jumped the gun there. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this behavior workshop. We're going to be just cruising along today, hopefully a little bit better than last time. We cut down to just one person to try and deal with some of the overlapping talking issues that were at least throwing me off. I don't know if they're throwing anybody else off. So without further ado, I'm Mackenzie. I have my CBCC-KA, which just means I'm certified in canine behavior. I've been clicker training for over 10 years now, amazingly. Doesn't feel like that long ago. Let's see. My dog's name is Oso. I got to hang out with him last weekend. He did a lot of really funny things, but the funniest thing that he did was had some people over to play board games, and he was doing this cute thing where he would just like walk around the room and then lay down behind someone and then stick his head on like we're sitting on the floor, so he'd stick his head on like their leg or a paw on their leg and then fall asleep. It was really cute and funny. And then also he didn't have a toy, so I gave him an old shoe that he really got pretty stoked on. Right now, we're still just working on, he's kind of regressed a little bit with dog activities, so working on that. He did really good. We had one thing where he blew up on a golden retriever that just kind of popped out from a doorway right into us, which that was a bummer, but he did really great with a bunch of other dogs this weekend. So, okay, Emma, you want to go next?
Sorry, I hear Sugar being weird. I'm gonna check on her. Actually, Amelia, do you want to go?
Yeah, great. No problem.
Cool. Am I good?
Yep.
Okay, hi, I'm Amelia. This is my dog, Calliope. This is her new go-to give me treats demand. It's like lay on her back. She looks like she's relaxed, but if you reach for a treat, she's like the least relaxed dog in the world. Finally.
Did you teach that settle on your back game that Emily has? No?
I haven't. She just picked it up during a training class one time, and then whenever I'm ignoring her, that's her surefire way to get a treat. It always works. So we are interested in working. She has this great habit of barking at noises and lights. She also barks at people walking by the house, but you know, which is frustrating, but she's a dog. But when she just barks at random because she hears a human outside, that's really challenging to live with. It can be really startling and kind of throw off whatever vibe's going on. So like lights in the windows at night or noises when she hears people talking or laughing outside. She does have a history of being pretty reactive or nervous around strangers and barking at them, strange humans and dogs. So this seems like an extension of that, except that we're safe in our own home and it's a little dramatic. So I'd love to work on that.
Great. Emma, do you want to go? Is Sugar all right?
Sugar was enjoying a shoe that had been left not in the shoe closet.
She heard about Oso.
She was enjoying it very much. Yeah, so I'm Emma. I have my CPDT-KA, so Certified Professional Dog Trainer, clicker training for just over 4 years. Right? Sure. We'll go with that. I have 2 deaf dogs. I have Kanga and I have Sugar. Funniest thing would probably be the noise that Sugar just made trying to eat a shoe.
I wish I could have heard that noise.
Her noises are just...
I really think we need like a GIF thing for like weird, dog noises. Like,
yes,
it's like sound free, and we need like a sound option where you just send somebody.
Yes.
Be so good. Okay, well, so my plan here, which we can follow or not, is I made a slideshow that I actually finished this time. It's not great, but it's something. And then I was just going to go over generally what we do to deal with problem behaviors, how we think about them, and how we deal with them using positive reinforcement. I think at least I was taught some very specific ways how to deal with bad behaviors, and those ways were usually ineffective and usually punishment oriented. So either saying no or using physical punishment, something else like that. And I think it's handy to just see, kind of get a refresher once in a while on like, how do we look at behaviors that we want to change in our dogs that, you know, some part of us is frustrated with or annoyed with, and how do we break that down, think about how to change it, and what are the things we're looking at when we're doing this to get effective behavioral change. I think it'd also be good sometimes just like check in with people we've worked with, but we'll get to that later on. But just so that if you're trying to do this yourself, you can kind of hear somebody else's behavior, which I think is really helpful to think about, oh, how would you deal with this thing that I'm not maybe emotionally attached to? And then also we'll just problem shoot a little bit. I'm using my phone to read my notes because I was a bad human who forgot to print them. So if you hear me getting texts, I apologize. Okay, so I'm going to move forward with that slideshow. It'll hopefully be fast and funny and not horrible. It's going to keep getting better. If you've already watched once, I mean, it's going to be similar each time. But I think sometimes we forget, like, it's important to like get refreshers on stuff, even if we believe in it, like breakdowns and refreshers, like in a weird way, like church gets that, right? Like you go back and you're like, oh yeah, I mean, I don't go to church, I'm not religious, but like that's one thing it does is just keep reminding people, like, what do we believe in? Why do we believe in it? How do we use it? And I think sometimes it's good. Like, so I hope it's not too boring if you've already seen it, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to try and start switching out my GIFs. So that's one thing that we'll get, like some weird different GIFs. And then once somebody invents the sound GIF, we'll start using Emma's awesome sound GIFs from Sugar as part of it. Yeah, cool. All right, here I go. Will somebody just tell me out loud if they can see my screen share when I do it?
Yeah.
Thank you. Ah! This is the most inelegant portion of the whole thing, I think. Can you see that?
Yep.
Thank you. All right. So, like I said, how do we change behaviors without punishment? Well, the first step, the hardest step, I think, is realizing that there are no bad behaviors, at least for me. I was thinking about this today, and I was thinking about this horse that is pastured with my horse named Mickey, who I get so fucking frustrated with. And like, because he's a resource guarder, and like he knows that I have treats or like carrots or apples, but he's also just like really just like wants attention and is kind of attention deprived, and like actually really just likes humans, but also sees all the other horses as like competing for their food and attention, unfortunately. So he has this like pretty ingrained behavior. I'm not really in a situation to be like working on it out there because I'm in limited control of like what's going on. He's not my horse, but like, you know, he also is like, he like keeps me from working with my horse. So I'm always getting like frustrated with him and upset and annoyed. And then I'm like, but when I'm like doing a good job, I think about like, okay, I got to like plan some time to go out, put out enough hay so that Mickey is like more interested in the hay than following me around. Or I got to go out and like, I just tried so many different things, like stand around for 45 minutes until Mickey is done with me. Then I can start working with my horse, you know, things like that. And I think it's just important to remember that, like, if you think of it as bad behavior, and when I think of it as like, fuck this horse, this is really annoying, I do things that I regret, you know, and like, I don't acknowledge that, like, he has pretty good reasons for like getting up, like trying to get food, you know, that's pretty understandable. Trying to diversify his diet is a pretty important like evolutionary drive. And also like trying to like get attention and mental stimulation, like that's important for all of us. And if you're just like kind of hanging out in a pasture all day and you're kind of smart and you think about things, you're gonna like be really interested in the people who give you information, even if it's negative. So the problem started when people came out with me, started trying to punish him for giving us attention. And then he started realizing there was information from us, and like that attention was way more rewarding than any of their punishment. And then he associated me with them and then started harassing me. And then I have done both things to my own discredit, and you know, the problem got worse. So anyways, that's me. Like trying to think through that thing. But I think like when I'm at my best and when I have success with this stuff, I don't think about the behavior as bad or good, just as existing for an evolutionary reason, probably emotionally driven. Usually we're frustrated with things that are like emotional needs in our dogs. And then we also have a tendency to impose like morals on our dogs, and instead of preparing them to meet our expectations and adjusting our environment and rewards to help them understand how to. So in the case of Mickey, like when I do a good job, I think, okay, you know, he needs stimulation. So sometimes I'll like, you know, go out there and just convince him that I'm not going to offer stimulation. That's one solution, you know, works somewhat. Or I give him something else to pay attention to, which is the best thing. It's just difficult out there, but like, hey, you know, other people sometimes, stuff like that. Those are effective ways of dealing with it, though. So I just saw this quote on the Dogmantics Facebook page, so I just stole it because I feel like it backs me up, and like whenever I can back myself up with Emily Laurel M, I'm gonna just do it. So there's no such thing as good or bad behavior, just behavior that is desirable or undesirable to the owner, as well as behavior that is beneficial to the dog's well-being or detrimental to it. So usually when we're dealing with this stuff, it's because we're trying to help our dog with the behavior that is harmful to them, or, you know, we're, you know, harmful to them in the sense that it drives us nuts. They need us to be on their side. Yeah, it's not necessarily bad. Okay, so to take an example of this, come on, GIF. Oh, what happened? I'm really good at slideshows. I don't know why this GIF isn't playing. Okay, we're going to deal with this one. Is this bad behavior?
No.
Yeah, it's not, right? Because like this dog is presenting a behavior that's like existed in its evolutionary history for good purpose, right? Defending territory potentially, or fear, right? Like maybe it's driven by fear. Maybe it's just like trying to scare away something that it considers potentially dangerous, right? Those are all good things. Like if you saw a bear and you didn't know what its intentions were, it'd be totally understandable to present a big posture and try and be scary to it to get it to run away. And this dog's just presenting something like that. And then, you know, we moralize our dog's behavior. So is this dog feeling guilt, right? I see a lot of people see this and think it's pretty funny, but it feels like really painful to me to watch, because that's pretty, in my reading of it, which is, you know, limited since I'm not there, like this dog has probably been punished. You know, that's typically the case when they're offering this like extreme level of like behavior that's meant to like try and diminish the possibility of punishment, right? So, and we take that, a lot of owners who punish take that as a sign that the dog is, you know, understanding and guilty of a behavior and knows what it's guilty of. But usually the dog just knows that, you know, in these scenarios, this human acts angry, intense, you know, physically violent with me. And if I do this, right, like it diminishes that possibility. And that's, you know, evolutionarily, like dogs have diminutive postures with one another, and it's smart of them to try it with us. And it's like smart when it works and keeps them from getting, you know, put in physical harm or emotional harm. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they understand the reason for that, right? And a lot of people mistake the posturing as an understanding of guilt, which it is not. It's just an understanding that something scary might be about to happen. All right, so are those bad behaviors? No, no, and no. And you're a bad human, a very bad, bad human, if you think that they are. You should go sit in the corner or go lay down or something. No, not really. I mean, we've all been culturally conditioned to like think of them that way, and it takes work and a lot of reinforcement and rethinking and a lot of conditioning the other direction to get to the point where, and I still struggle with it, where you don't see those behaviors as bad. But the sooner that we accept that they're not bad behaviors, the better our chances of actually changing the behavior. And that's pretty crucial, especially when you're dealing with behaviors that are affecting the welfare of your dog or, other animals. So instead of labeling these behaviors as bad, I think the first step is just try and put ourselves in the dog's position. So why might those dogs have done these things? So I put out some ideas, but let's just talk about that first slide. Let's see if, oh my gosh, I did something wrong. How did I do this? Is it still big screen for y'all?
No.
Okay. Ugh, I'm really good at this. There we go. All right, back in presenting mode, sorry. All right, so let's just talk about this one. It's actually kind of good that it's frozen. I don't know why it's not playing, but so in this GIF, the dog jumps up and grabs this child's hair and pulls her backwards down. So do either of you have some ideas about why that behavior might be happening outside of good or bad contexts?
Looking for attention?
Yeah, attention-seeking behavior, which is understandable, right? Like if if I'm getting ignored and I spend most of my day inside and I'm getting stir crazy, I'm going to develop a whole suite of behaviors to have something new happen in my environment because it feels bad. It's not like a good thing. You're actually your brain is actually atrophying, the less mental stimulation you're having. So a smart dog, a dog who really is bent towards that may come up with really seemingly aggressive behaviors in order to get attention. So that's definitely a good thing to think about. And if we are thinking about this behavior as attention getting behavior, what would be some solutions for it that wouldn't just be, timing out the dog, hitting the dog, telling the dog no? Any ideas?
Make sure to give them lots of attention when they're doing something that you like.
Right, totally. Like making more opportunities for that dog to get attention by other means, right?
Yeah.
Acknowledging that for that extreme of a behavior that dog needs is probably if the base root of it is lack of attention, lack of stimulation, then we need to come up with solutions that give that dog, fulfill that emotional need elsewhere. So training is an awesome option. In fact, for a lot of these things, training is an awesome option. Coming up with toys that they can play with that are more complicated than just needing a human to actually activate them. Planning time throughout the day where the dog is getting physical attention, or if for whatever reason you really can't provide that time, trying to come up with ways that other people can. So taking that dog to a responsible doggy daycare, or having it walked by a responsible dog walker, or even making some sort of arrangement with friends, creating play dates with a dog that it enjoys. There's a lot of different ways to deal with attention-seeking behavior, but the worst one that you can do is just say no, because what's happening is if you just turn around and say no every time your dog does something you don't want and they're trying to get your attention, what have you just done?
Rewarded it.
Yeah, you just gave them attention, and no is pretty much meaningless information to your dog unless it's been associated with something, which most people, only do in extreme moments and mostly just use it as if the dog is understanding exactly what they say. So you're actually rewarding it, encouraging that behavior. Okay, I don't want to talk about too many possibilities so that we can discuss them on some other behavior day. All right, where was I at?
There.
Yeah. So there's a lot of reasons dogs do things we don't want them to do, but much of the time the driver behind the behavior is emotional. Can be fear-based, frustration-based, due to a lack of stimulation. Usually attention seeking is in that category. There are lots of reasons, there's definitely more than that. But if we look at what the potential emotional drivers and trying to find alternative ways to satisfy or deal with them, we create opportunities for changing that behavior, right? So if we just simply rely on trying to punish the behavior, even if we succeed in the classical sense of what punishment is supposed to do given to us by Skinner, where it's supposed to diminish that behavior, right? Decrease the likelihood of it happening. If the emotional driver isn't being satisfied, there's going to be some other probably detrimental to the dog behavior that develops. And you see that a lot with people who punish and manage to punish successfully behaviors that the dog develops some sort of other emotionally detrimental behavior or physically detrimental behavior, like obsessive compulsive behavior. A lot of times, like in cases where there's like extreme licking, right, to the point where the dog's getting sore spots that need to be medically treated, there's a history of extreme punishment also. Not always, but it's definitely correlates a lot of the time. And, you know, maybe the punishment successfully stopped the dog from barking or something else, but it didn't satisfy that emotional need, and the dog found another way to satisfy that emotional need that was also destructive in its own way. So it's just one of the pitfalls of punishment, even when it seems to be working. Okay, don't hit the same button that made us go small last time, Mackenzie. Once you have some ideas for the driver, I'm sorry, typo. For the driver it's time for management. Okay, so what I meant to say there is once you have some ideas about what the driver is, it's time for some management. And by management, usually we're talking about, you might hear the word thrown around like antecedent arrangement. So focusing on those things that create a life and environment in which your dog's needs are being met, but their opportunities to practice the problem behaviors are kept at a minimum, right? So we may not leave the kid unmonitored with the dog who jumps up and bites her hair in order to get attention. Not saying that's the absolute reason that dog did that, but as a possibility, we won't keep them in an unmonitored situation. You know, we'll try and create opportunities for them to interact positively, but not when her attention isn't focused on that dog until an alternate behavior is being created, right? And then also, management also means trying to satisfy that emotional need elsewhere by potentially like getting that dog more stimulation in its day, right? But we're limiting their opportunities to practice the behavior that frustrates us, right?
Yeah.
So another way to do that, like if you can think back to the German Shepherd above who's barking at the gate, well, maybe we don't leave that German Shepherd unmonitored in the yard anymore, right? Or we build a secondary enclosure where it can't get that close to the gate, where people can startle it and make it afraid, right? And this is an important step, because the more opportunities our dogs have to practice those behaviors, the more ingrained they become, and the longer the road is to behavior change. Any questions? All right, we're going to keep moving. We're almost done. All right, the other thing that I think a lot of us do without meaning to is we expect things before we teach them instead of teaching before we expect. So we often have a whole slate of expectations of our dogs, and then when our dogs don't, you know, magically come to meet those expectations, we become frustrated and declare their behavior bad. But if we work on and teach behaviors like self-control, like leaving the things that they want, get them the things that they want, that relaxation is the number one payer, right? Or just like, you know, teaching them in those scenarios in which the behavior that we don't want to see actually is beneficial, right? Like for some people, barking is a great behavior because they're concerned about intruders, and barking at things is something that will alert them to potential intruders. So you could teach, you know, 1 bark gets paid and 3 don't, something like that. So creating a context in which the behavior is paid, and then also trying to just create a whole range of contexts in which the behaviors we want to see are also getting paid. So another step along that way would be jumping. Can build into jumping into my arms, right? Or barking can become a trick that is on cue and paid when you say speak, but not when, you know, somebody walks by outside. And finally, I think it's important to just like try and readjust to noticing the positive. If you mostly are noticing the negative with your pup on, you know, your day-to-day, try tomorrow to notice like 5 good things and ignore all the negative things, or 3 good things, or 2 good things, and keep trying to build on noticing the positive. And I think what you'll see is that most of those negative behaviors, the more you, I'm not saying that like if your dog is like running into the street, getting hit by a car, you turn around and don't look, you know, but if you make a big deal about it and put a lot of attention, positive or negative, on that behavior is more likely to repeat if that dog finds that attention positive. So I think if you can try and focus on creating a life where where your dog is getting lots more opportunities for you to notice the positive, and you spend more of your energy noticing the positive, that positive is going to build. And that's true for dogs. That's also true for friends, family, loved ones. You know, if you find yourself frustrated with somebody, creating opportunities for them to do the things you want to see and paying attention to them rather than talking a lot or harping a lot or focusing a lot on the things you don't want to see, those positive things are going to happen more. And it's often a better way of getting behavior change from any animal. So bad behaviors repeat. We've been over that. Interrupting can be helpful, but if you find yourself interrupting a lot, you're probably not you're probably not doing a good enough job at management, and you need to focus on management, right? So I would definitely interrupt a dog that was running in the street about to get hit by a car, but then I would up my management game by keeping that dog on leash around roads, especially, right? And practicing a lot of positive reinforcement on recall, especially around distractions. Yeah, and you can ask for other things that you want to happen. And again, just watch out for the word no. If you're relying heavily on the word no with your dog, then you're probably not getting behavior change, right? And you're just dealing with an ongoing problem and maybe encouraging it. So it's important to step back and try and think of alternative ways of changing that behavior, because it's you, not your dog, who's probably making the mistakes at that point. Okay, so I think it's helpful to see these ideas in action. So for the rest of the class, we will workshop your behaviors. Yay! Boring talk over. I'm hoping to add more GIFs as we go along. So each one of these slides will be like, boom, a GIF, something funny. And then I'm just going to say my thanks right now so I don't forget at the end like I did last time. So I just want to say thanks to everyone who has supported me to make this happen. I see some familiar names in here. So thank you. I really appreciate it. And then just really quickly that I do this work in honor of the animals who affected me and the land that has nurtured me and the peoples from whom it was stolen. And my hope that my work here will live up to them. And so please understand that anybody watching, you owe me nothing, but please be kind to your companions. And if for some reason you feel the need to help keep this boat afloat, you can always make a contribution at those places. Okay, that's that annoying thing that I did. All right, I think I'm back now. Oh, look, it's me. Hi. You want to start workshopping a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we talked about this a little bit more thoroughly before we started broadcasting, but do you mind just kind of going back over what you'd like to work on a little bit?
Yeah, she's here right now. So it's kind of doing the feedback thing. Is that okay? So she is semi-react or has a history of being afraid of strangers, humans, and dogs, and barks at them in order to let them know they need to stay away. And she does this in the house, watching people pass, but also if she hears a human or a car or sees a light through the window. And it very well could be frustration. That is something, you know, she kind of seems to be somewhat insatiable to me. Just sniffing her treats right now. So she, it's hard when it feels so out of my control. Like having her, it's really easy for me to keep her from watching people pass the house or not deal with that, but managing like a light coming in through the window at night is really hard, and managing just the noise of, like, I just can't play music 24/7 in order to keep her from hearing things. So the behavior that she does exhibit is this like kicking with her back legs. It looks really aggressive. People are really scared of it when they see it in real life, but she like plants on the front legs and kicks her back legs and barks. And to varying degrees, like if the mailman comes to the door, it's a much scarier bark. Sometimes she'll just grrr. But that's sort of the big behavior. She does do the kicking thing when she's excited about anything, and after she pees, and you know, all during the day. It's not in and of itself the issue. What the bigger problem is, just the barking is really sort of disruptive to our life. It can be really stressful, I guess. It really amps up the tension in her and also in me, my partner. So it adds to the anxiety, and it's hard to manage, it turns out. So it'd be nice to, I don't know, I don't see the barking as much in other places in her life. She'll do it if she's really frustrated, but it's more like a short bark, like a yip, as just sort of trying it out. Like if she's not getting the treat she wants and relaxing didn't work, she'll give it a go, but never very intensely. It's almost exclusively reserved to seeing other people or feeling like her space might be threatened. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so let me just try and repeat that back. So we're doing the behavior that we're trying to work on is barking intensely. Does that sound like a fair way to describe it?
Yeah.
Around mostly around the house in response to sounds and visual stimuli from like lights, especially things that might indicate that people are outside.
Yeah.
And dogs.
Yeah.
Great. So potential emotional drivers for this behavior. So you said frustration. I think fear came up there. Do we have any other ideas for like why this behavior might be happening?
So I've definitely seen her do it for different reasons. I've seen her do it because someone's outside, and I've also seen her do it because she's trying it out because she wants something that I have. And I'm not like giving her my dinner. And so she's like, well, relaxing didn't work. I'm going to go try my kicking thing. And then she like runs back and is like, did I do it? So I have reinforced it in the past with attention, like, because it's really hard when you're not out the window to know what she's necessarily, so sometimes she'll do it and I'll be like, okay, like you need to stop because you're murdering them or you're hurting the glass or something. And so I've totally reinforced it with attention. So she will try and use it for attention, but I've been getting better at figuring out when to sort of ignore that and then reinforce her in other ways. So at this point, it seems to not be about that anymore. It seems mostly about getting the person to go away and potentially just boredom, frustration, like needing something.
Okay, so yeah, frustration, boredom.
Yeah.
Great. Emma, do you have any ideas about other potential emotional drivers or anything? Any thoughts there on just like what the base level? Great. I think we covered it pretty thoroughly. Do you feel like you can see like a definite difference between the behavior when it seems like it's fear-based or frustration-based versus when it's like a testing it out sort of thing to see if it gets a treat? Is it the same behavior, or does it feel more like similar but like less intense, I guess would be a way of describing it?
Yeah, when she's trying it out for a treat, it's sort of half-hearted. And great. She comes back pretty quickly.
Yeah, great. Okay, so we have some options now. Like that feels like a pretty successful like diagnosis of what's driving those behaviors. And to me, and this might sound counterintuitive to some people, but to me, the fact that we're trying it out sometimes for a treat is a really good sign, right? Because we're going from emotional drivers of fear, potentially fear, frustration, or boredom to like, does this work? Does this pay? How does this pay, right? Which to me is just like, oh, that's a behavior starting to transition from the base emotional drivers into a behavior that like we can start to kind of moving down the line of those steps, harness and show when it's paid, right? Cool. And that can be like a huge part. Like if I'm going to try it out when I just want some attention or want a reward, then I know that sometimes like this behavior like gets rewarded by you, which means you're involved in that whole behavior chain, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas if that's not happening, it's so much harder to change that, right? Because if don't even see like that behavior ever pays, then like we never go back to, you know, mom or our guardians for any sort of information, and then like adjusting that behavior starts to shift. So it's like actually like a really good thing. It's like you've taken this fear-based behavior or frustration-based behavior from the point of just being an emotional driver to one where you're actually involved. So you've like already started the momentum of changing it, in my mind, right? Now, is it still an emotional, like fear-based or frustration-based behavior sometimes? Yeah, probably, because there's going to be different triggers or the things that start that behavior that are going to have more emotional value or less, right? So it's probably scarier if there's like 10 people being really loud outside than it is if like, oh my God, everybody look at this. Just so cute. Than it is somebody's bored, Mike, let's do this. Then it is like if there's like one person walking by. And it might be satisfying some other needs too, like, you know, like I think that like the frustration, boredom, like lack of stimulation is potentially there sometimes in that like barking at stuff throughout the day. So I think that we should talk about different ways of breaking that down. And then like what we should be seeing if like we're actually dealing with the emotional driver that we think we are. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you have anything else to add there, Emma? Great. Okay, so if we're kind of working off of what I talked about before, our management options, you kind of went over that, but really quickly, just for other people who might be watching to think about that side of it, is we've diagnosed these things. So our management solutions would be, well, we can try and come up with ways to create an environment that's less stimulating so that she's getting less options for hearing or seeing the things, right? So what is that? That means like maybe covering up the windows, right, where the lights are coming through, or potentially even changing them. But I mean, I don't know if you tried this, but like if it's like some sort of light stimulation from cars, if it's a window that you can put something that like blocks that, you might have easier success, right? Cardboard, painting, you know, you can paint over it with some of that stuff that like glosses over, and that's like worth the time if it's creating frustration for you, right?
Oh, get this. It's already like you can't see through it. It's a window that goes ceiling to floor on both sides of the door. They're tiny.
Uh-huh.
You can't see through it. It's like basically fogged up windows, and all she sees is just this light, and then it's gone. So I could potentially cover all of them. It's true.
Yeah, you could cover all of them. Maybe not. I mean, I don't know what those windows look like from here. I mean, maybe no, I can't see that far. Computer joke. So funny. Just an option, right? That's a management option. And when we think of like those options, like some of them may be more or less realistic for us, right? I mean, another management option would be to like go out and put like a road closed sign so that like, you know, not every management solution where that may work for our dogs will work for the realities of the world. But that's just something to think about. Hey, you know, hang a sheet, whatever. If that's going to help transition it, that's great.
Okay.
Other management oriented solutions for like the audio would be like playing noises, right? Music throughout the day to keep that at a minimum, trying to find a space in which like she hangs out more where that's at a minimum. But I do think that like management is not a way of like changing behavior necessarily. It's a way of managing that behavior. And most people want to move on to the point where they don't have better success in that behavior. Like maybe our dog isn't going to become quote unquote perfect, but isn't so frustrated for us in our days so that we're not frustrated by it. I think that's a fair thing to drive for. But just to talk over the management options, it just sounds like you've probably taken a lot. And then, you know, crating would be another one. So crating just limits her access to the environment, thereby limiting her, like you can crate her somewhere where she can't see XYZ thing, right? When you said you're doing some crate training?
Yeah, our crate is currently in that area, in the living room, kitchen area. And we've been working on it while we're cooking, keeping her in there and doing everything good in there. She gets her meals and gets access to the outdoors through the crate. So
oh, awesome. And that's like a little bit of the barking for like attention. She's like just being super fun right now. Yeah, she's laying on her back going,
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, too cute. Yeah. She's like, this. Why is this? Why are we doing this boring thing where I get talked at too much? How is the crate training going? Is that like when you're working on it, alleviating the issue? Have you been able to like leave her in there for a while and see like when those things happen, do they diminish?
So we haven't worked on duration really. We've mostly been working on just building it as like pairing it with her favorite things. And she is voluntarily falling asleep in it, which is awesome with the door open and all of that. But I haven't really left her there like while I'm gone.
Right.
Even while I'm in another room. We haven't done that yet.
And like the reason why the crate is a good option is because if it's not like frustration and like fear is one of the basic causes, like there's definitely like a bred or evolved driver in our dogs to like territorially like mark random noises and stuff. And especially it seems like sometimes when they feel like there's like more space to guard than they alone can do, that seems like it builds a bit. And so by giving them a smaller space, sometimes they're more successful at not feeling the need to alert to everything. So I definitely keep pursuing the crating, which I don't really want to get into the training side of that because you did a great job covering it. Like make it a great spot. Don't just throw them in there. Wait until they're choosing to like sleep in there and stuff before you start building duration. But it sounds like you could probably start building duration. Do it while you're still around. Practice a little bit of like leaving for a minute once you've had like 15 minutes of success while you're there, you know, and then start building that duration. That could be your whole solution right there, but let's not stop there because that could be a big part of it. So, all right, let's just get into training and how to like positively interrupt it and some other things to do. So when she does bark, like what's your typical response to that right now?
Oh, my typical response would be so it depends. So either she'll bark and it will end quickly, in which case I'll just be ignoring it. But if it continues and she gets worked up about it and it seems like it's not going to stop of its own accord or until the human passes, then I'll usually interrupt her behavior. And my presence pretty much stops it. She knows I don't like it. So if I show up, she's like, cool, now I can interact with you and probably get treats out of it. Or like, she usually is following me around. So in the case when she hears something, she's left me, and if I show up, she'll it breaks her. Like she has we do a lot of training, so I'm immediately more reinforcing them barking out the window.
Cool. And so in terms of like training on this behavior, what are the tactics that you've tried? So like you've interrupted, given positive reinforcement for stopping?
Yeah, so we have not done anything consistently, which is an issue.
Yeah, that's a real thing that happens in our lives. It's not a big deal. Yeah. Thanks for admitting to it.
Well, one of the things we tried briefly and do it's just so bad. It's so bad. I'm so aware of like reinforcing it intermittently and just like driving up the behavior. But, so we have tried to ignore the behavior, and when it stops and she's been relaxed for 5 seconds or whatever, trying to reward her, tried to work on like recognizing the precursor behaviors and see if we could reward that before it got to the built up. But then she just did that all the time, which is probably fine, but also it means that because we've done most of our training with treats. She's just getting really fat and I have to carry treats around everywhere. So I tried briefly, like she loves playing chase. So when she goes in her crate or something, we pick up a toy and chase around the house, and she loves that. So I'm like trying to introduce that as a healthy lifestyle reward that I can do without having to carry things around with me. But I haven't figured out how to put that into the barking. It's just because it happens most when I'm not paying attention, when I'm doing something else. It's not convenient, like when I'm in the bathroom or when I'm reading a book and I'm just not paying attention to her.
Cool.
or something.
So we haven't tried like capturing the behavior or like showing her when that behavior rewards by directly rewarding it when it happens.
No, I briefly started teaching her speak, and then I stopped. I don't know why.
Okay. So that's good. I mean, that's a training option, right? To try and diminish it. I guess I would try and train like 2 different behaviors. One is that like quiet rewards more, but speak is paid when I ask for it, you know? So we start by doing like, here's our dog, right? And instead of like waiting for our dog to just like something happens outside, let's pretend like there's a loud noise right now, bark, bark, bark. And then like I reward that noise, right? That would be one way of doing it. But instead we want to try and start getting that behavior to happen in response to like a stimulus that I control. So like maybe I knock on the, you know, wall or floor or something, dog barks, and then I quickly reward that behavior, right? And then I immediately try and move into pairing. I guess I should point this thing at me. It's hard to be the camera guy and also the talker sometimes. Okay, so then I immediately try and move that behavior into, I'm saying like, I say speak, knock, and then dog barks and I reward it. And then pretty quickly I'm just saying speak, dog barks, I reward it. But I can also pair that with like, you know, rewarding the silence. So this gets a little bit more complicated, but it's like I say speak, right? Knock, dog barks, I reward it. I mark again and reward that silent period. And I do like 15, 20 of those, right? Where it's just like speak, knock, dog barks, I mark, reward, dog.
How long do you wait for this? How much silence do you want before you like mark that as a? And do you name that? Do you name like quiet or something?
The way I think about naming behaviors is I name the behaviors that I only want to happen when I ask for them most of the time, or like that I mostly want to happen when I ask for them. So like I start off like naming them and if they're occurring, right? And then the behaviors that like I want to be the default behaviors, I wait a lot longer to name, right? So like way down when it's like a really thorough behavior that maybe I need to ask for sometimes, I might start naming it down the road. Okay. Because I want more things to potentially trigger that behavior, right? So like I want this and like the word speak or sing or rough or, you know, shut up. I really think it's funny when you do the like shut up and then your dog barks at you once. I think that's hilarious. Like a really good way to pay for that game. But there's also a lot of other clever ones. You know, I want that cue to get the bark most of the time. I want that bark to show up for that. So I'll name it right away, and I want it to be really clear that that's the stimulus that results in payment for that reward. I don't want it. I want to fade that knock as soon as possible and the other stuff. And in fact, I want to start building tolerance to other things and make sure that this is the thing that really pays. I forgot to cameraman again. This is the thing that really pays, right? Whereas if I want the default to be quietness, I want like everything to like, it's like when you're teaching really good stay, you know, and you like spin around in a circle and like you reward because the dog didn't get up, and you like pretend to jog and you reward, and you jump up and down, you walk back. All those things are starting to also become cues to stay, right? In their own way, right? Like you're desensitizing them, but you're also like, you know, it's like all the shit that happens that maybe could make me walk, I'm going to do it in a way that doesn't and build up to a way that does, or like that might used to have, right? Like, so I would take one step away. And I'm using some shorthand here for our viewers because I know Amelia's done a lot of training. You know, I don't expect like anybody who's watching to necessarily follow that, but I'm just trying to make a whole world of things that mean quiet, right? Where quiet rewards. And I'm trying to make one specific thing where bark rewards. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it does. I like all that.
Yeah, so like the game would be, and it's like a lot like training a good stay, except we're just trying to train that impulse control around barking. You know, in a good state, sometimes you as a trainer are gonna fuck up, and your dog's gonna get up and try and walk towards you. That's good information, right? Where you can break it down and you try and do the same thing again, but slowly building towards it. So if your dog broke that stay because you walked 10 feet, you're gonna walk 5 feet 20 times, rewarding each time to try and get that tolerance up, and then you're going to start walking 7, then 3, then 8, then 2, then 3, then 1, then like 20 feet, right? And we're going to do the same thing with the things that trigger barking, right? But also giving her, just like we use with the OK cue or some sort of release cue, a really clear signal for what pays.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it would be really similar, but let's try it a little bit, and we'll experiment with that, see how it goes, and just see if that starts leading to breakthroughs. I think in combination with the crate training, we're kind of double tackling this thing. And so if we can start to try and make like a really clear speak command, right? And then like a really clear everything else means not speak command. And like I would start with like just like take it really easy. Like what's the stimulus that's going to make the bark happen? Okay, great. So I'm going to try and capture because I know it's going to happen. So it's going to be speak, knock, right? Click for the bark, reinforce. And then I'm also going to start really quickly pairing that with like 1, 2, 3, click for the silence, but no clear indicator, no overly clear indicator. Then go right back to speak. Do you want to try that? Does that seem like something you're comfortable trying?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think if you knock on something, she'll maybe give you a little barky?
I don't know. We'll give it a go.
All right. Let's see. And then just be really clear what your cue is. You know, this is a nice one. It's a visual.
Ooh.
Let's see if we can try and get like 10 of those real quick.
Okay. Just knocking.
Yeah, knocking or something else that you think will get her to bark.
Okay, let's see what we can do. Let's hear.
Really good.
Just growling.
Yeah, you could do a low-level vocalization.
Hey, good
yeah,
job.
nailed it. Good, very good. And now click for the silence.
Okay.
Beautiful. And let's use our cue. Let's use our capture cue real quick.
Okay.
So just do this before you knock.
Okay.
I didn't hear it, but I believe you. Click for the silence. Yeah, beautiful. Very good. Yeah, click that. Yeah.
Missed it. Try again. You can do it. You're such a good growler.
Like, no, shut up, Mom. That's annoying.
She's like, I know it's you.
Yeah. Okay, though.
Who's there?
Like, someone might be there. No noises.
I got nothing.
I would reward that. Screw it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, because like that's teaching her like the quiet pays, right?
Yeah.
You know, we don't have a really clear on cue for the bark. And you could play that game. You don't necessarily need to capture the barking. But that's why I do like to reward the barking like immediately when it happens. I don't like, for myself, I've just found that like ignoring it rather than rewarding it often allows for the emotional driver to build, right? And if the worst case scenario, you start teaching a dog to bark at you for treats rather than bark externally at the environment for fear, right? Because then they start doing it as a performative behavior.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would play just seeing that response. Like it's difficult to elicit the barking when it's you, right? I would start playing this, if it was me, I'd start playing this game, which is click for barking whenever it happens, trying to have rewards there.
Okay.
And you can also, if you feel like you can just be like, good job, and she'll stop and then reward her with a game, right? Maybe a reward that way. But I would start just like desensitizing her to the stimulus by just upping your game. Like you can knock around the whole room without getting the behavior. Let's see if you like go outside and knock on the door. Have you tried that yet at all?
No, but she will bark at like cutting something in the kitchen, like the knife on the
Beautiful. Yeah. So think of that all that as a stay, but instead of a stay, it's a quiet, right? So I would do the cutting with a click treat, right? But then I'd also
quiet, not for barking.
Huh?
Am I at this time? Am I like practicing getting her to bark still? Or?
Yeah, I'm sorry, that's unclear. based on how she responds, right? So I would like, if you can't seem to do it, you can take 2 courses of action here. You can capture the barking, right? Like if it's a stimulus that like, because like really quickly the capturing the barking turned into just offering quiet time because the emotional driver is a big part of the barking for her, which is often the case, right? Because we're just changing it, right? It starts to become a game. And we just want her to start thinking that the game is barking is not a big deal, you know, and it pays, but here's what pays better, staying quiet. So I would just play it that way. And as she barks, you know, you should be seeing what we just saw, right? Which is a reward schedule that starts to build towards the behavior that you want to see, which is quietness. And we got that even when we were trying to capture a little bit of barking. Since that's what we ultimately want, I would adjust my training to build towards the quietness. Since the barking's getting hard to elicit, I don't want to scare her, you know, like, yeah. And then I would start trying to be like, okay, the game is like a lot of weird noises and sounds happen, hopefully at a level where you're not actually getting afraid. You just stay quiet. And we're just going to try and build our tolerance to those things that way. Does that make sense to you? So you just played it really good, and you can do it from a capturing point, but I think it's just like so difficult to capture it. I would just start working on that. And you can, I wouldn't expect, you know, you're going to have to do some pretty good management. So I'd start to keep building the crate. But eventually what you want to be doing is you've been gone for an hour, you come back home and do a low-level knock on the door, click, treat for no barking, right? Or even for 1 bark, right? Something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Not super clear, but I'll send you some follow-up emails, and let's just check in a little while and see how it's going.
Yeah, great.
Emma, do you have anything to add to any of that? No? Do you have any follow-up questions before we call it a night? I kind of went on too long, so I don't want to go.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, so like something I could do this week, like, I don't know, 5 times a day or something, spend 5 minutes working with like a different part of the house,
yes,
kind of working up to the door and the window areas, and either work like looking for a single bark followed by quiet rewarding, or if she's not barking, then just cleaning out for the quiet.
Jackpot for the quiet, really, in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that like the reason why I think it's important to try rewarding the barks is for what we just saw, right? Which is they quickly diminished when we could even elicit them. So we're not trying to like scare her to the point where she feels like she needs to alert. But I also don't feel like I don't feel like an alert bark is like the sort of thing where like it's, you know, hopefully it's not it doesn't feel painful or punishing to her.
Same stress as
right. And it seems to quickly alleviate with the reward schedule. So that's good. And yeah, thank you for, if I was doing a better job, I would have said, try this week, just like you said. So nailed it. Practice where you can have success.
Okay.
And once you're having success, move it closer to the place where you can't, but don't go immediately over there, right? Like move it to like the kitchen or whatever room is like intermediary for you. And then like, yeah, you can be playing this kind of like weird game, which is like, okay, if I'm doing crazy stuff, like you get a reward for barking once, but you also like get way more rewards for like quiet. I didn't really demo that super well, but like you can click for, it's just like that stay thing, you know. Relaxation protocol is amazing for this because if you like play it, then you learn how to apply it to other behaviors. Like that's really most of what you need for behavior change. But it's just like, you know, like can you not bark while I knock 3 times? Awesome, click treat. Can you not bark while I knock like 5 times? Awesome, click treat. Did I say the bark thing? Like, and you barked once, click treat, right? Just like, did I say okay and you got up at that point? You can reward that behavior, right? Did I not? I might just still click treat it because I might have accidentally given you like an emotional feeling. So I want you to have a positive one. I'm just going to try and reward further on the side of like ignoring it, right? And make it easier.
And then dealing with the actual people and noises outside that are potentially stressful. For the most part, just try and manage as much as I can. Am I interacting with her, with them at all?
I would manage it. I mean, I would try and change the emotional drive of that behavior. I imagine that like right now, for a lot of times, the emotional drive is higher, right? Like because they're more scary, they're more actually the thing. So I'd manage it when you're away. And when you're there, I'd just make an effort to have a clicker, some treats out. And then as quickly as possible, you know, if she's not barking, start rewarding with play. That's awesome, right? But try and notice those things. I mean, she's doing a good job of alerting them to you, so she'll stop doing that at a certain point. She might start barking for treats, but that's great because that's just a good reminder that, okay, like I need to play more of this game because like she's doing it for a reward. So I need to go outside or like have a friend go outside and walk around for 2 minutes and text me that they're out there. You know, it might take a little bit of work training wise, but you can like go outside for 5 minutes, like then do like walk up, knock on the door softly, open, click treat down, you know, in a week or two, something like that. But right now, I would just make sure that the emotional driver is changing by rewarding the behavior, right? And you might see like quick results if like it took that, like, you know, just that many treats for her to not feel like she needed to alert to you knocking. Ideally, if you're set up well, like you could even like put up a barrier to keep her a little bit further from the door in the hopes that it diminishes the behavior and just practice like rewarding it and just see what happens. It's getting rewarded by virtue of it still existing, right? So you're just building yourself into that behavior chain. And I know that like you felt like you're maybe having to use too many treats and stuff, but I think you can, the better solution there is continue to use treats, but when you're having success, start using play behaviors. Make sense? Yeah. Awesome. Any last thoughts, Emma, before we call it a night? Thanks a lot for doing this. Appreciate it. It's good to see you guys and get to check in a little bit. Thanks for watching, everybody. Do you feel good about trying to do a check-in in maybe like a month and just see how it's going? Will you know between then and now?
Yeah, my job is going to be until 6:30.
Okay.
Which is 7:30 your time.
Oh, okay. That's
timing might be a little wonky.
Well, then you and I will just check in. No big deal. We'll see what happens. Okay. Yeah. Okay, great. Let me know how it's going, and I'll try and shoot you an email in the next couple of days, just reiterating some of this stuff.
Cool.
Cool. Thank you.
You want to say bye? Touch.
Bye, Calliope. It's like, damn it. What is that crazy sound? Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Emma. Bye.